It's me, Mr. Avant, and here we are, almost on the last week of school, and I'm still teaching. Yes, we're still learning about decimals. This is going to be the third lesson that I've taught on decimals to you guys, and those of you who are hanging in with us in these classrooms, thank you so much. It's going to benefit you in 5th grade when you actually start hitting decimals. 5th grade is going to hit decimals hard. And if you don't get used to it now, decimals and fractions, you're going to have a very, very, very tough time in math in 5th grade. Those of you who are used to getting A's and B's might start getting C's and D's if you don't understand this material. So I am teaching you as hard as I can to learn this stuff, but we're still taking baby steps here, and we're still going over some basic facts of decimals. So let's look at today's objective here. Technically, I'm teaching Module 6, Lesson 6, decimals, tens, ones, tenths, and hundredths. Of course, the decimal here would be the tenths and the hundredths, but we're adding the mixed numbers. Remember, tens and ones would be the whole numbers involved in a mixed number. Tenths and hundredths would be the fraction part or the decimal part of that mixed number. So we're going to look at this lesson. We're going to look at decimals. We're going to keep looking at the simple stuff, tenths and hundredths. That's all we're going to ask for you in 4th grade. And next week, or actually on Thursday, we're going to start adding these decimals together. And by next week, your last week, we're going to start multiplying these decimals. And hopefully that'll give you a base understanding of decimals. And you know, hopefully you're better off for it when you hit 5th grade. So let's take a look at what we have up here right now. I wanted to feature first this mixed number, 2 and 48 hundredths. And I have 3 different models to look at it from. The place value chart, the area model, and the number line. I want you to remember when we're dealing with hundredths, think about it in terms of money. 48 pennies out of 100 pennies. Remember, if you had 100 pennies over 100 pennies, that would be $1. So when you start seeing these improper fractions with, let's say, 250 over 100, you're actually talking about $2.50. There's 2 whole numbers in there. But let's keep it simple for now. 2 and 48 hundredths, or you could also say $2.48 if you want to look at it as money. But let's talk about what this is going to be as a decimal first, in several different models. Let me find the marker I'm going to use. Let's do the area model first. So if we're talking about 2 whole numbers, of course, when we're looking at these area models, the way Eureka does it is these are broken up into tenths. I have 3 squares here that are broken up into tenths, and one of them is going to have to be broken up into hundredths. So of course these 2 right here, these are your 2 whole numbers. So I'm going to have to shade in 1 whole number. Okay, that's 10 out of 10. That's 1 whole number. Let me get a different marker for writing that. That is 1 whole number. Plus, we'll give it an expanded view. And then we'll do the next 10 out of 10. 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, 9 tenths, and 10 tenths. Here is your second whole number. All right. And now comes the tricky part where they're going to ask you to do this on Eureka. They want you to turn this into hundredths. You do that by going the opposite direction, not the opposite direction, but perpendicular direction. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. By making 9 lines, I created 10 spaces this way. 10 times 10 equals 100. So I have hundredths here. Now when you try to do this on your Cami, when you do your lesson, your problem set on your computer, you're going to want to use your line feature in your Cami tools, and I'll teach you how to do that when we actually do a live lesson. I'm going to show it to you on paper today in this video, but in your live lesson I'll show you how to do this in Cami, making those lines across there. It'll be a lot easier to do. Alright, so we need to shade in the last part of our model. Of course we said we had two whole numbers, and now we have to add 48 over 100. I had that in purple. 48 over 100. Boop. Okay. That was my robot voice. I miss doing voices for you guys. I miss it. Okay. So when I say 48 hundredths, remember, we need to break this apart, because this 4, if we were looking at it in the decimal, this 4 would be in the tenths, and this 8 would be in the hundredths. So we're actually saying 4 tenths. Let's break it apart here. 4 tenths plus let me do it this way, 8 100ths. So when I say 48, I'm saying 4 tenths plus 8 hundredths. And of course this 2 is over here too. But look at this 4 tenths here. What are we really saying when we say 4 tenths? 4 tenths, if I were to shade it in over here, look how many hundredths I end up with. Let's go ahead and start shading that. So here's my 4 tenths, part of that 48 hundredths. Okay, I just shaded in 4 tenths, this way. But look what I actually have. 4 tenths is equal to 40 hundredths. So when I'm breaking it down here, I could say 40 hundredths plus 8 hundredths when I'm breaking this apart. 4 tenths is the same as 40 hundredths, and you need to start getting this in your head, because this is going to be on Eureka too. Another example, if I said 8 tenths, that equals 80 hundredths. If I said 3 tenths, that is equal to 30 hundredths. And maybe that'll be on your time to climb too. So keep that in mind when you do your time to climb. So again, let's go back to this. 1, which is 10 over 10, plus 1, which is 10 over 10, plus 48 hundredths. We still have to shade in our 8 hundredths now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So you see the 8 hundredths is not quite 1/10. There's 2 more hundredths left to make that last tenth. Let's go ahead and make our decimal now. Okay, our decimal would be, how many ones? We have 2 ones. And how many tenths do we say we have? Well, there's a 4 there, so that's 4 tenths. Or I could go ahead and put a 0 there and call it 40 hundredths, but we're not going to do that. And then we have this 8 in the hundredths place. So 48 hundredths is equal to 2.48, or 48 pennies out of 100 pennies. It's easy to think about it that way. Now, what I'm going to do also with this lesson is I'm going to go ahead and give you a fluency page. And if you're really serious about learning decimals and getting it straight in your head, you're going to have to do some practice. Remember how I kept having you do multiples and times tables over and over again so that you could spit it out automatically? Well, you need to do the same thing with decimals. You need to practice over and over again. What is 3 tenths as a decimal? 0.3. What is 80 hundredths as a decimal? 0.80. So you need to get used to going back and forth between fractions and decimals. Let me show you one more case. Now, there are some tricky ones. When you look at them, it doesn't make sense. Before I do that, though, let's go ahead and do the number line. If we are talking about 2 and 48 hundredths, here's my whole numbers at the top up to 5. So I have 2 and then 48 hundredths. This gets a little tricky because, well, remember, we're actually talking about 4 tenths plus 8 hundredths. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're in this neighborhood right here for 4 tenths. And then in between these tenths, there's going to be 10 more lines to create the hundredths. And so you have to imagine or estimate that 48 hundredths is somewhere in between 4 and 5 tenths. Itty bitty bitty tiny marks. If you could get in with a microscope and look real close, there would be 10 marks in between these tenths. So 2 and 48 hundredths is going to be right here in that neighborhood. Okay, let me erase something here to give myself some room. I'm going to go ahead and take this down. I know I spent a lot of time making it. I spent a lot of time on this title right here, just so I would make it look nice. The title takes up most of the board, but I think it's okay. I like decorating stuff to make it look nice for you guys. I like to give it some pizzazz. Okay, let me show you some tricky examples of decimals that might confuse you at first. What if I said 4 hundredths? When you have a case like this, remember, you want to use the second place after the decimal point, okay? Remember that you have tenths and hundredths here. 1/10 and 1/100th. So you would have to put it right here, 0.04. Okay? Now, what if I put a 0 on this and said 40 hundredths? Well, then things change, okay? 40 hundredths, remember, actually is, if I eliminated these zeros here, 40 hundredths is actually 4 tenths. So to say 40 hundredths, we do this. We just simply call it 0.40 would be 40 hundredths. Whenever you have the 0 out here, you go ahead and put it in the hundredths place. This proves to you that 40 hundredths, or anything that's in the hundredths, is actually in the tenths as well. 40 hundredths is 4 tenths at the same time. Let me give you another example. Let's make it even smaller. What if I said, what is 1 hundredth? 1 hundredth would be 0.01. The 1 goes in the hundredth place. You've got to get used to doing that. Now, let me expand or extend this information a little bit more. What if I said 15 over 1,000? Whoa. Well, then I would put a thousandths place over there, and the 5 would go there, because this is actually 10 hundredths, and the 5 is 5 thousandths. So 10 hundredths plus 5 thousandths is equal to 15 thousandths, or 0.015. Once you get used to decimals, this stuff gets real easy. It's so automatic. It's like counting 1, 2, 3. So I hope you practice that fluency, and let's go to the problem set next. Okay, we're back and we're on the problem set, lesson 6 of module 6. And I just wanted to let you know that the objective of this particular lesson is that students can represent decimals in ones, tenths, and hundredths, meaning a mixed number represented as a decimal. And of course, in my whiteboard lesson, I added tens up there as well. We didn't quite do that, but all you would have to say is how many tens do you have, how many ones do you have, how many tenths, how many hundredths. So let's look at this first problem here. I'm going to do the first example for you. And remember, lesson 6 is all about looking at these in as many models as possible. So this one says, number 1 says, shade the area model to represent the number, drawing horizontal lines to make the hundredths as needed. Locate the corresponding point on the number line, label with a point, and record the mixed number as a decimal. So that's what this is right here. What is 1 and 15 hundredths? Okay, so first it says shade the area model to represent the number. The number is 1 in 1500ths, and since these squares are in tenths, 1 square equals 10 over 10. So in order to represent one whole number, I need to shade the whole thing. I'm going to use pencil this time. I'll pull out my fancy shading skills here. Don't get to draw too much. I'm hoping I can draw some more this summer. Try to get back into my art and do what you guys like to do in class, which is draw a lot, which I can totally appreciate, but I've got to get this math into your head too. Alright, so I just shaded in one whole number, which is 10 over 10, and now I have 1500ths left to represent. So in order to represent hundredths, I have to take one of these squares in tenths and draw 10 spaces the other direction. That's 9 lines. There's 2 lines, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Running out of room. There's 9. Okay. I didn't quite do it even enough, but that's okay. We can still do it. So 1500ths. Let's break 1500ths apart. Remember, 1500ths is actually going to say 1/10 plus 5 more hundredths. Okay, so 10 hundredths is actually 1/10. So 10 plus 5, 10 hundredths plus 5 hundredths is 1500ths. That 1/100th is actually 1/10, and you can see that in the model. Look, if I shade it in 1/10, I have 10 squares, 10 hundredths. 10 hundredths, 10 hundredths equals 1/10. And then I have to shade in 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my 5 hundredths. There's your 1500ths all together. Now, the decimal is really simple. One whole number, 1.15. That is 1500ths. Literally just taking that numerator off and putting it after the decimal point. But you have to understand what you're doing so you don't mess up. Okay, so now I have a number line to do. So here's one whole number, and I have to represent 1500ths. Remember, 1500ths is 1/10 plus 5 hundredths, so that's 1/10. Remember, this is broken up into 10 spaces in between. There is 1/100th, and then in between the tenths, in order to make hundredths, there's 1/10, and then in between there are 10 lines, which I can barely make, and 5 hundredths is in between there. That would be, that would be my 1500ths. So one whole number and 1500ths. It's in between 1/10 and 2/10. So when you're doing these on your own, remember, like number 2 is 2 and 47 hundredths. 2 and 47 hundredths is going to be 4/10 plus 7 hundredths. Because if you look at the decimal, it's 2.47. The 4 is in the tenths place, and the 7 is in the hundredths place. So when you do your number line down here, you're going to have to remember that you're going to go to 4/10 and then find 7 hundredths the best you can. It's going to be closer to right there. There's actually 10 little lines in between the tenths. That is the tricky part here. Alright, number 2 says estimate and locate the points on the number lines. So again, if you're estimating where the point is, you have to imagine there are 10 marks in between the tenths to create your hundredths. So 2, here's 2 right here, here's 3 right here. So 2 in 95 hundredths is actually equal to 2 plus 9 tenths plus 5 hundredths. Okay? I know that's tricky, but that's what we're doing. 9 tenths plus 5 hundredths. So I have to go to 9 tenths, which is way over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There is 9 tenths. And then in between here, there are 10 little lines, and 5 would be halfway in between. So that is where 2.95 would be, 95 hundredths. 95 hundredths is almost 100 over 100. I estimate that it's really close to the 3. Okay, you can do B on your own there, 7 and 52 hundredths. Let's look at the second part. Alright, so we have number 3. Write the equivalent fraction and decimal for each of the following numbers. So the first one says A, so now we're kind of reading in unit form. 1, 1, that's the ones place and place value. 1, 1, and 2 hundredths. So I literally write 1, 1, and 2 hundredths is a fraction. And if I want to turn that into a decimal, remember your place value. You might want to write this on top of your page. 1/10 is first, and then 100th is the second number. So I have to put a 0 because there's no tenths and there's only 2 hundredths. You see what I did there? B, 1 and 17 hundredths, or 1 and 1/10 and 7 hundredths, 1.17. Let me do one more to make sure you got it. Let's do E and F. E says 4 ones and 58 hundredths. Okay, literally 4.5 tenths and 8 hundredths. Okay, let's do another one. Let's do the last one. F says 7 ones and 70 hundredths. I accidentally put a decimal point there. Okay, so that means 7 in the ones place, decimal point. There is 7 tenths and 0 hundredths. That represents 70 hundredths. Or you could say $7.70, 70 pennies out of 100 pennies. Okay, the bottom is simply one of those draw a line to match the decimal and the mixed decimal and the mixed fraction. So you have decimals in the middle, unit form on the left, and mixed numbers, a whole number and a fraction on the right. 7.30. This reads 7 whole numbers and 30 hundredths. Okay, so I look for 7 and 30 hundredths. There it is down there. Whoop. And I look for 7 and 30 hundredths down here. Oh, remember, 30 hundredths is also 3 tenths, and I see 7 ones and 3 tenths. It gets tricky, guys. You got to keep it straight. That's why we want to show you all these different models so you understand what it means. I'm going to go ahead and do these with you. Maybe I'll leave one blank for you. So 7.3, that is 7 and 3 tenths too. Okay, 7.3. So look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and there's only 4 of these uniforms over here. That means that is also 7 and 3 tenths. And I'll look for 7 and 3 tenths over here. I don't see it, but I know that 7 and 3 tenths is the same as 7 and 30 hundredths. So it's the same thing as the first one. The next one, I'll tell you what, I'm going to go to the last one, and you guys can figure out the other ones. I hope you can do it. Okay, the last one says what? 73. So there's a 7 in the tens place and a 3 in the ones place. I see it right over here. 7 tens and 3 ones. And where's 73? There's 73 whole numbers up there. Okay. I hope all these explanations help you. This video is intentionally a little bit longer to give you more explanations to help you. Please take the time to watch the whole video. Don't skip around. And this is for you to help you do your problem set. Good luck out there, and please do the fluency to see how well you do. Have your parents check it. Have your older brothers and sisters check it. Work with them as well. This takes lots of practice to get it straight in your head because you're new to decimals and fractions. Good luck out there, guys. See you on Thursday. Bye-bye.